Hello, everybody. We are starting with our a series of episodes of Surviving PhD. And as you already know, we will talk with various members of AITA bioarchaeology who obtained their PhD, and we will hear about their experience. So we are now with Ivana. Would you like to present yourself?
Yes, thank you, Natasha. So my name is Ivana. I'm an archaeologist, and I did my PhD at the University of Belgrade, at the Faculty of Philosophy, Department of Archaeology. And throughout my PhD, I explored the role of fishing in the formation of early Holocene or Mesolithic and Neolithic settlements in the Danube gorges, the particular interactions with this riverine landscape, and the particular human-non-human relations. So I enrolled in this program in the beginning of 2011 and defended my thesis in early 2017. So it took me 6 years to finish.
Okay, we finished on the same year. Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
So yes, the idea is to give some advices and guidelines, but through our like personal experiences, what was your how you feel it, what was the problems. So did you have any grant during your PhD?
Not a grant, but I was actually very lucky. And from this perspective, I can really say that it was that I was actually very privileged, because for the whole duration of my PhD, I was actually employed. And I was involved in one of the scientific projects that were taking place at the Faculty of Philosophy. And it was actually the part of a larger state-funded initiative to employ young scientists, young scholars, just starting their PhD on these various projects. So it was at the time aimed at young researchers below the age of 30. I was 29 at the time. So you might say that I was really at the right place at the right time to start my PhD and actually get a salary doing it.
So you were also working while doing the PhD?
Yes, I did work. But as I already mentioned, it was on a scientific project. And I think this particular funding scheme was, in my opinion, very productive. Nowadays, there are some tendencies, of course, with the Serbian funding schemes to align with those of the EU in terms of project-wise. This kind of funding scheme is nowadays often considered as ineffective, but I do not agree with this because it was very different in comparison to many projects today. Because, as I said, one of its main aims was the employment of as many young scientists as possible, rather than undertaking a particular strictly predefined research theme in a short period of 2 or 3 years. These projects went to go on for almost 10 years, really. And of course, the budget was limited, so the funding mainly involved our salaries and occasional small pieces of equipment like a laptop or something like that. Occasional small travel grants to go to a conference, maybe in your own country or in the region. So there was not really, like differing from those big projects of today, there was not really a great budget, for example, to do some sorts of costly laboratory analysis or for a long study trip abroad. But these projects were very broad because they employed a lot of people. So in that sense, me and there were many other PhDs involved. We were kind of free to pursue our own interests. So the topic was broad, so we could all fit in a way. And basically all of our work was related to our PhD. That is a scheme that I think it's very productive in terms of people generating their own ideas. I'm sorry, my cat jumped. But we don't need to stop recording, do we? Okay. He just wanted to say hello.
How
I think
was his experience during your PhD?
he joined he was born after
Mm.
I finished my PhD, so I could be a better a better cat mom to him. My attention was undivided then. But like I said, I think it was very productive because of course, nowadays you set up a project, you have a particular research themes in mind. They can be very productive. I'm not saying that. And you can employ particular PhDs to do a particular thing that you need for the project, which is of course understandable. But this, in a sense, we were really free to pursue our own research interests, to build that confidence, to work on the themes that we were genuinely interested in, which I think was a great benefit of this project. So in that sense, my work was greatly related to my PhD, which is an important thing because I know that many PhD students do not have this luxury, whether if they're working in academia or beyond outside of academia while they're doing their PhD. Of course, we had a variety of other different tasks that are related to any project, really, like administrative work and reports and new proposal writing, and of course, writing papers, doing other kind of research that is not necessarily involved to one's PhD. But looking back, I think it was a really productive setting, and it allowed me to focus on my PhD, which is, of course, a luxury that not many doctoral students and young researchers have. And this is the time, if you're working in a setting like this, that you can actually focus on this great big thing. Because as we were talking previously, nowadays, like if you stay in academia, it's a whole lot of different things that you're working on simultaneously. So in that respect, I could really focus on my PhD. That was a great benefit of a funding scheme like this.
Yeah, sounds really good in that, like really ideal settings.
It
However,
was.
yeah, you probably had some obstacles, no, during
Sure, sure. Well, there were, of course, to begin with, some like technical difficulties I struggled with. And many people who are working, whose dissertation is related to a new field or a field that it's new within their own context, are, I'm assuming, struggling with similar issues. For example, I was studying fish bones from these prehistoric Mesolithic, Neolithic sites on the Danube, and there were not a lot of specialists in my immediate surroundings. So, for example, I had to make my own osteological reference collection. I was buying fish from the market and preparing their skeletons. I learned a lot from the local fishermen. That was a good thing. Um, it was a process, like it was a lot of trial and error. I made many mistakes along the way, which of course slowed down my process. But at the same time, I had a really wonderful and a very supportive supervisor who provided a lot of guidance, while at the same time she kind of nourished my independence and autonomy, which I think is really important to having. I mean, at the end of the day, it's your PhD, and which helped me a great deal to acquire both the necessary skills, but also confidence in the process. But apart from these technical difficulties, I think the greatest obstacle was, and this is something that I really hear from so many of my colleagues, that I was my own worst enemy. For example, I was around 29, 30 when I started doing my PhD, and previous generations of researchers in Serbia were usually somewhat older than this before. And at the time, I had the impression that it was treated as something that is the crown of one's career, rather than its start, how it's perceived nowadays. Nowadays, of course, doctoral students are generally younger than I was when I started it. So that kind of added that extra level of pressure. I felt that doctoral thesis is something that needs to be groundbreaking, special, maybe the most important thing I have ever done. And perfect in every way. So I remember like going through this endless cycle of procrastination and perfectionism.
Hmm.
I felt that I couldn't even start writing before I read every single reference, which I considered to be important for the subject. And I remember, like, I still do this. This is the problem. I weigh every sentence I write. I'm always in pursuit of that perfect sentence. And of course, as we all know, like, nothing ever is going to be perfect. And it was all really very unproductive, and it was all very emotionally draining. So I would often put off writing for this perfect day when everything sets in nicely,
Yeah.
when I have when I have inspiration. It's like that. I always remember that wonderful quote from the Calvin and Hobbes comic, which I think resonates so deeply with so many of us. Like, so do you have an idea for your project? Oh, no, I'm waiting for inspiration. You can't just turn on creativity like a faucet. You have to be in the right mood. So what mood is that? The last minute panic. So
Yes.
that is so true. That is so true. I think I struggled with this a lot.
Hmm. And did you have some critical moments when you felt like you can't do this? It's like I'm not good for it. I'm not able to do it. I'm not able to finish. Did you ever felt like you're just going to drop it and that's it?
I did have moments where I felt that it will never be finished. But I didn't really feel that like giving up would be a better option. Maybe because I was so determined and immersed in this that I couldn't imagine myself doing something else. I was really enthusiastic about this. But then the important thing is, as I said, I had the opportunity to actually work throughout my PhD. So it wasn't a matter of balancing precarious working prospects, that I didn't have to do another job while I was doing my PhD. I was living in the same city where I'm from, and I studied in the same city. So I had that family support. I mean, I eventually moved out, so I could afford like a tiny apartment, but it wasn't like, so my financial situation was not like fantastic, but it was in a way, at least for the duration of those years, certain. I wasn't worried, which is such an important part of this whole process. And it's so important for mental health. I mean, we were always talking about how this precarious nature of academia is actually what's driving people out of it. Not that they're not good enough or motivated enough or hardworking or creative. It's not that at all. I'm certain of it. So I didn't think the dropping off would be a better option. Because also doing a PhD gave me like a sense of purpose, accomplishment. It actually brought me much joy. It like fed my inquisitive mind, something like that. And not only that, it has brought like so many experiences, so many wonderful people in my life. But of course, there were many critical moments where I felt that it was too hard, too overwhelming, that it will never be done. And I understand completely that many young researchers, especially those who didn't have the luck or possibilities that I did, feel like dropping off could be a better option. Either during their PhD or after it, or even after doing several rounds of postdocs, even then, which is, I think, so discouraging that people leave academia after accomplishing so much because of these uncertain work prospects. So, as I said, I truly believe that this is the main reason that many people leave academia, not because they're not motivated enough or creative enough or good enough or hardworking. And I think they shouldn't beat themselves up if they do indeed decide to leave it, if this is like a toxic work environment for them.
Exactly. At the end, your mental health is more important than anything else.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And did you have any psychological help during this process in the moments when you felt down?
Oh yes. Oh yes. Um, I actually did develop a lot of anxiety over the course of writing my PhD. And I can like separate it with these two major phases in doing my PhD. And the initial one in our particular field, as you also know and do, involves like laboratory work of actual analysis, in my case of fish bones from these prehistoric sites, which took place in the laboratory. So this was a good working environment. This was a good setting. My friends and colleagues were there. My supervisor was there. I was seeing people. I was interacting with them on a regular basis. We could, exchange our difficulties and our experiences. And then comes the writing process, which I did completely in my home. And that was a very solitary and isolating experience. I basically confined myself to my apartment, and I wouldn't even like leave it for days or weeks even, apart from those like little mundane tasks like grocery shopping. um it was really like an alternative reality where nothing else existed apart from this thesis. And I was really feeling anxious and isolated all the time. And sometimes I wouldn't see my friends or family members for weeks or even months, some of them. I didn't leave Belgrade for so many for a long time. I wouldn't allow myself to go on a even small vacation or something like that. Um, and I especially struggled when I was actually at the very end writing the conclusion, because it didn't feel like I'm approaching something big, the end of something big. I just felt that I was completely drained emotionally and physically, and that I had nothing left to give.
Mm.
Um, so how did I cope with this? From this perspective, I can now say that my coping mechanism wasn't very good. I was driven partly by this last minute panic because I needed to finish. And I was really determined on finishing it. And I eventually did. But I think it would have been so much better if I actually allowed myself to not isolate myself that much, to allow myself to enjoy this process, to spend more time with loved ones, to engage in traveling or sports or just being outside for a bit,
It becomes a little bit obsessive, no? Like
Mm-hmm.
you feel like you cannot give yourself permission to do anything else.
Right, right, right. And everybody, I think, knows this. Even if you're feeling unproductive, rather than saying, just doing a bit of stretching, like a little yoga for half an hour or something like that, or whatever, go for a walk with your dog, go for a walk with your friend, go out with friends, have a drink, see a movie, whatever. Uh, we feel that like we need to be glued to the laptop, even if we're not doing anything of particular value or nothing productive. Like if I'm sitting there, I'm doing something worthwhile. If I'm, um, uh, placing my references, or I'm doing something productive, if I'm working on the images. Like I remember I put off my working on my tables and images at the very end. And I remember it was like 3 or 4 day process where I was doing this, and I didn't do anything else apart from that. I didn't like leave my desk
Like,
for 3 or 4 days, just to sleep. Which I mean, I really really wouldn't recommend it to anyone. Absolutely, like for the nothing like it's worth the price of your mental health.
mm. And if you could go back now in time, what would you do differently?
Oh, but it's something I still struggle with. That's the problem. Because like as you know, as we all know, like the work in academia always involves like writing papers, writing project proposals. I need to write a book now. So I still have kind of this love-hate relationship with writing. I still put it off endlessly. But then when I'm done, when I'm happy with something I wrote, I feel this joy again, and this a sense of accomplishment when I'm done. So it really is kind of a love-hate relationship, and I still struggle with it. I think it's really a lifelong process of learning to engage with these things, and it's so important to talk about it. That many people struggle with this, and I cannot say that I still mastered it completely. Um, I also recognize this perfectionism and procrastination in my students as well. I recognize it in my younger colleagues, in my peers. It's something that a lot of us share. And I think I'm a bit better maybe at this work life balance nowadays, because there's just so many obligations now, more tasks we need to do, more work when you're both teaching and doing research, and you just figure out that you cannot at the time I thought, because this PhD was this big one thing, that I can put off everything until it's done. I can put off my friendships, relationships, my well-being, that I can put it off until it's done. But nowadays, I'm aware that if I put everything aside when I'm done with all the work, it will never happen.
Yes.
So nowadays I incorporate things that I love, like leisure time and other important things in my schedule, because so I'm a bit better, but that's just because there's so much more things to do. What I would say to my younger self and what I would say to my current self, this all sounds so cliche when you say it, but I really think it's true. Just write anything, write drafts, erase it, write it again. It's a process. It doesn't have to be perfect. You can go back to it. Just write and clear your thoughts and make them coherent, and just put them on paper. Even if it's even if it's just a sketchy draft or something like that. It's remember why you're doing it. Remember that you're there in the first place because it brings you joy, because you're happy with it. I remembered this also one quote that was that I found very useful by Doris Lessing. Like, whatever you're meant to do, do it now. The conditions are always impossible. So that came in handy often. But like, there's this other thing that I also mentioned, like this precarious nature of academia, where this kind of self-help just isn't enough, where this won't help you, even if you're in a good state of mind. What if the society is not as it's not? Some other, I think, what I would find like really, what I found really useful in these cases is just find a support system. Like, many people are going through these very same issues. We need to talk about them. We need to share our experiences. People need to know that everybody is going through this. And we need to realize how important it is to practice solidarity and this radical empathy and mutual aid. And as I mentioned already, and don't beat yourself up if you do indeed decide to leave academia because of this. Again, I've seen people who are more inquisitive and happy with learning and reading and writing and exchanging perspectives and ideas outside of academia. That they can, if they can find a job that sustains them, they can still practice these things with like more passion, because then it's not a burden of striving to find a proper job in academia, because it's just so difficult. It's not your fault. It's not a matter of being persistent or hardworking or creative. It's just that academia, unfortunately, is so precarious in nature. So those are kind of some points that I wanted to.
It's not you, it's academia.
It's capitalism. Yeah, well, yeah, but academia also has the power to challenge these things and to discuss these things, and to reach out and to form these kinds of communities. So it's not, I mean, I'm not saying it's all bad. It is possible to change things in academia and in academic settings as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Ivana.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you
Okay.
for inviting me, and good luck with the channel. I think it's really important.
Thank you.